Mr. Speaker, will you please call the House to order?
The House will come to order. In the absence of clergy, let us pause for a moment of silence. Visitors are invited to join the members in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We can dispense.
Oh, we have a quorum? Now we have a quorum. A quorum being present.
A quorum being present, the clerk will read the Journal of Tuesday, May 17th. Mr. Morelli.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I move to dispense with the further reading of the Journal of Tuesday, May 17th, and that the same stand approved.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr.
Morelli.
Speaker. If I can, in just a minute, give our schedule for the day. And so nice to hear so many voices join us in the Pledge to the Flag, wasn't it? But let me just identify a few things that have happened in history for our young people in particular. On this day, May 18th, in history. For instance, in 1980, Mount St. Helens erupted in Washington State on this date. This eruption was the most deadly and economically destructive volcanic eruption in the history of the United States, and the only significant volcanic eruption to occur in the lower 48 states since 1915. On this day in 2012, just 4 short years ago, the social networking company Facebook held its initial public offering on the NASDAQ stock exchange with a peak market capitalization of over $104 billion. The IPO was the third largest in American corporate history. And on this day in 1951, the United Nations moved out of its temporary headquarters in Lake Success, New York, to its permanent home in Manhattan, where it meets regularly to this day. With that as a little context and historical background, let me just describe our schedule for the day. Members have on their desks a main calendar. After any introductions and housekeeping, we will begin our work today on consent, beginning where we left off yesterday with calendar number 595. We will otherwise work off the debate list as time and interest demands. So with that as a little background and schedule, Mr. Speaker, if there's any introductions or housekeeping, this would be the time to take it up.
No housekeeping at this time, but Mr. Thiel for an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for an introduction today. Today is the annual Lupus Awareness Day in the state capitol. Earlier this month, both the Senate and the Assembly passed resolutions making this Lupus Awareness Month in the state of New York. And today we are joined by many, many lupus advocates from across the state. And it's my pleasure to be able to introduce them today. And, you know, lupus is a chronic autoimmune disease. While lupus can affect anyone, 90% of people diagnosed with lupus are women. And lupus is 2 to 3 times more prevalent among women of color. Yet public awareness lags. Among Americans aged 18 to 34, 72% of those polled have either not heard about lupus or know little or nothing about lupus beyond the name. It is estimated that lupus affects 1.5 million Americans. My daughter Josephine is one of those 1.5 million. She was diagnosed when she was a senior in college just 4 years ago, and it was a harrowing experience to go through that diagnosis process. Today, she is currently finishing graduate school at Boston University to pursue a career in the field of health and nutrition. She is proof that with proper diagnosis and treatment, and armed with the necessary information, that one can live a full and successful life despite this illness. And I want to introduce and thank those lupus advocates that are here today. They are a critical resource for those who have been diagnosed with this illness. You know, I certainly know that it was the case in my family that we knew very, very little about lupus, and to have organizations out there, I'm from Long Island, but across the state, that are there for support and there to provide information is greatly, greatly appreciated. So It is my pleasure to introduce the lupus agencies of New York State, all of them here today. In particular, I want to thank Kathleen Arnson, who did all the organizing of this event, working with my staff. And it was a pleasure earlier today to present all of those here today with resolutions that we adopted earlier this year, and to have the opportunity to share information and to share stories about something that affects far too many New Yorkers, and about which too many New Yorkers know far too little. So, Mr. Speaker, if you could introduce them and give them the courtesies of the House, it would be greatly appreciated.
Certainly. Ms. Peoples-Stokes on the same topic.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to interrupt the proceedings and have you welcome these wonderful people who work very hard on advocating for an issue that's very important across this state. As you know, Mr. Speaker, our former Speaker Pro Tem, before she left us, always carried this legislation on lupus issues, and I am honored to be carrying them now. And when folks come to visit us in our chambers, advocating for at least two bills that we often pass in this House, I appreciate an opportunity for you to welcome them. I was up kind of late last night and noticed that there was the social butterfly of the group was tweeting, and so I retweeted her back, never having met her before, but I knew that she was here on a very important issue, and it's my pleasure to have the opportunity to meet her today, and certainly it's my pleasure to ask you to welcome them to our chambers.
Certainly. On behalf of Mr. Thiel, Ms. Peoples-Stokes, the Speaker, and all the members, we welcome you here to the New York State Assembly. We extend to you the privileges of the floor, commend you on the work that you do to help others who are inflicted by this disease. We hope this day will be beneficial both to you and to all of those that you serve. Thank you so very much. Mr. Santa Barbara for an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to interrupt for an introduction. Today, I'm very pleased to welcome to the Chamber the Girl Scouts of Northeastern New York. They are here today joining us all around the Chamber. This is a wonderful organization celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Girl Scout Gold Award. This award is available to high school Girl Scout students and encourages young women to distinguish themselves as active citizens who are committed to personal improvement and making their community stronger. For 100 years, it has been helping young women distinguish themselves on college applications, develop useful life skills, educate and inspire members of their community. The Gold Award demonstrates positive impact participating in the Girl Scouts can have, and proves that young girls and young women can change our community simply by putting their ideas into action. My daughter Mariana is part of a local Girl Scout troop 2336, and her work with our local students makes me very proud. There, with her Girl Scout colleagues, she's being instilled the skills and confidence for success and affects meaningful change in her own community, across the nation, and possibly someday on a global scale. I recently got to join Troop 2336 and other local Girl Scout organizations on Girl Scout Give Back Day in my hometown of Rotterdam. Together, this group of Girl Scouts gathered and assembled more than 1,000 care packages for troops serving overseas through a local program, Military Mom in Action. And this is just one example of the many, many things Girl Scouts do in our communities and the good deeds that they do each and every day. Today, I'm very proud to have them all joining us here in the Chamber in honor of their 100th anniversary of the Girl Scout Gold Award. Mr. Speaker, if you would welcome them all to the Chamber and extend to them all the cordialities of the House.
Certainly, on behalf of Mr. Santa Barbara, the Speaker, and all the members, for both those above and those below, we welcome you here to the New York State Assembly. We extend to you the privileges of the floor. Happy 100th. We are pleased to see that Girl Scouts are alive and well and continuing to develop young minds and young bodies in positive ways. Thank you so very much for being with us, and always be welcome. Thank you. Mr. Soretto for an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In a short while, I'll have a resolution that speaks on Huntington's disease, and I'd like to speak on it. But before that, I would like to welcome friends of mine that are here for public awareness for Huntington's disease. And they are Lenora and Alan Pfeffer, Jesse Barr, Marcelo Junkel, Mark DePerno, Hillary Forbes, Melissa Chafee, Lisa Wickens, Carissa Brown. I believe I have them all now. Could you please give them your warm welcome?
Certainly, on behalf of Mr. Soretto, the Speaker, and all the members, we welcome you here to the New York State Assembly, the People's House. We extend to you the privileges of the floor. We thank you for the work that you do to assist those who suffer from that particular disease. Team Hope, a great name. Thank you so much, and continue your work.
Santa Barbara.
Mr. Santa Barbara for another introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very pleased to welcome to the Chamber 30 participation in government students from the Fonda Fultonville High School in Montgomery County. These students traveled nearly 50 miles to be with us here today and are very interested in seeing their state legislature in action. I'm excited to have the chance to meet with them later today. They are here to meet with me, ask questions, and learn about our government, and I also want to hear their concerns. They are joined by their teacher, Mary Brown, who deserves to be commended for ensuring they get a firsthand look at how our government works. I'm also pleased to welcome from the same school district, Barbara Barker, who for 28 years has been influencing the young minds of students at Fulton, Montgomery counties. She is joining us as well. She's taught middle school and high school students in Fonda Fultonville since 1994. As a technology teacher, she's been involved in many forward-thinking and educational initiatives, including pre-vocational programs at Hamilton, Fulton, Montgomery, BOCES, and Project Lead the Way at Fonda Fultonville. She has made a difference in the lives of many children by encouraging them to pursue their careers and what they are passionate about. Her colleagues say she is a true innovator at finding ways of empowering students, and because of this, she was selected by the Fulton Montgomery Technology and Engineering Educators Association as the Regional Teacher of the Year, one of the highest honors given to technology education classroom teachers in New York State. I'm very proud to have these students joining us here today, Mr. Speaker. They are joined by Thomas Chaccio, the superintendent of the school, Elizabeth Fonda, the secretary, and Barbara Barker's daughter, Sarah Van Dyke. Mr. Speaker, if you would extend to them the cordialities of the House and welcome them to the chamber.
Certainly, on behalf of Mr. Santa Barbara, the Speaker, and all the members, we welcome this extraordinary group of students and supervisors and teachers here to the New York State Assembly. We extend to you the privileges of the floor. We hope that you will spend instructive time with Mr. Santa Barbara and also here as you observe the legislative proceedings. Welcome. Thank you for coming. Mr. Morelli.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're going to begin on page 3 of the main calendar. beginning with Assembly Resolution 1365 by Mr. Soretto, and I understand he wishes to be heard on the resolution.
Mr. Soretto on the resolution. Oh. Clerk will read. Hold on, Mr. Soretto. Clerk will read.
Resolution number 1365, Mr. Soretto. Legislative resolution memorializing Governor Andrew M. Cuomo to proclaim May 2016 as Huntington's Disease Awareness Month in the state of New York.
Now, Mr. Soretto on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Huntington's disease is a devastating, hereditary, degenerative brain disorder for which there is presently no effective treatment or cure. Huntington's disease slowly diminishes the affected individual's ability to walk, think, talk, and reason, eventually making the person totally dependent upon others for his or her care. Currently, more than 250,000 Americans have been diagnosed with Huntington's disease or are at risk of inheriting the illness from an affected parent. It is imperative that there be greater public awareness of Huntington's disease, and more must be done to increase activities at local, state, and national levels to support those afflicted as well as their family caregivers. This disease was brought to my attention by a former chief of staff, Lynn Neveu. Her mom is suffering from Huntington's disease, and now, recently, we found out that Lynn has recently discovered that she too has this disease. And when you look at Lynn, I mean, she's a 26-year-old girl, and you look at what we've gone through with what her mom, as she slowly is getting sicker and sicker, it's a disease that really, really, truly has to be brought up to the public awareness. It's imperative that there be greater public awareness of Huntington's disease, and more must be done to increase activity at the local, state, and national level in support of those afflicted, as well as their families and caregivers. Tonight, the lights at Niagara Falls are going to be turned blue and purple today in recognition of Huntington's disease. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to talk about this.
Thank you, Mr. Soretto. On the resolution, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The resolution is adopted.
Resolution number 1366, Ms. Solage. Legislative resolution memorializing Governor Andrew M. Cuomo to proclaim May 16, 2016 as Mothers Equal Pay Day in the state of New York.
On the resolution, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The resolution is adopted.
Resolution number 1367, Ms. Malliotakis. Legislative resolution memorializing Governor Andrew M. Cuomo to proclaim May 20th, 2016 as Bike to Work Day in the state of New York.
On the resolution, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The resolution is adopted. Mr. Morelli.
Thinking of how I might bike to work, so I'm just trying to work that out in my head. We're going to start, Mr. Speaker, on page 44 of the main calendar with calendar number 595 by Mr. Cusick.
Clerk will read.
Assembly 5236, calendar 595, Mr. Cusick, an act to amend the election law.
Read the last section.
This act shall take effect immediately.
Clerk will record the vote. Mr. Morelli.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I invite everyone to cast their first vote of the day. This is a special invitation, one time only. If you could encourage members who can hear the sound of our voice to do the same.
First vote of the day, Mr. Morelli reminds us to be here or be square. Are there any other votes? Announce the results.
Ayes 93, noes 7.
The bill is passed.
Assembly 5302, Calendar 596, Ms. Robinson, an act to amend the banking law.
The bill is laid aside.
Assembly 5331, Calendar 597, Mr. Thiel, an act to amend the general business law.
The bill is laid aside.
Assembly 5404, Calendar 598, Mr. Abenanti, an act to amend the tax law.
Read the last section.
This act shall take effect on the 60th day.
Clerk will record the vote. Are there any other votes? Announce the results.
Ayes 90, noes 0.
The bill is passed.
Assembly 5510A, Calendar 599, Ms. Jaffe, an act to amend the public health law.
Read the last section.
This act shall take effect immediately.
Clerk will record the vote. Are there any other votes? Announce the results.
Ayes 99, noes 0.
The bill is passed.
Assembly 5598A, Calendar 600, Mr. Kavanaugh, an act to amend the election law.
The bill is laid aside.
Assembly 5935, Calendar 601, Mr. Pichardo, an act to amend the state finance law.
The bill is laid aside.
Assembly 6823, Calendar 604, Mr. Jaffe, Ms. Jaffe, an act to amend the town law.
Read the last section.
This act shall take effect immediately.
Clerk will record the vote. Are there any other votes? Announce the results.
Ayes 106, noes 0.
The bill is passed.
Assembly 7054A, Calendar 605, Ms. Rosenthal, an act to amend the mental hygiene law.
Sergeant at Arms asks for quiet. Read the last section.
This act shall take effect on the 30th day.
Clerk will record the vote.